Good evening, everyone, once again. My name is Tayo Olachupo, as you can see on the screen, and I just want to do a quick overview of the new mixer which was purchased in the church, and it's a Behringer X32 full console. But before I start and just run through it, I would like everyone to just do a quick introduction, your name, and what you do in the media department in the church, if that's okay. So I'll start from iPhone, if you can hear me. Okay, let me move on to Esther. You can just quickly unmute yourself, just introduce yourself and what you do in the media department in the church. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Next person I can see here is Lizzie. If you could just do a quick introduction, the name and what you do in the church.
My name's Elizabeth, and I basically just do the mics and the sound on the mixer.
Thank you for that, Elizabeth. Thank you. I see OLO, I'm guessing that's Brafayo. If you could do a quick introduction, please.
Hi, good evening. My name is Fayo, and I work on the camera and yeah, in church. Yeah.
Thank you, Brafayo. There's iPhone. If you could just say who you are, please, your name.
Hi, I'm Tejas Pemi, and I help with announcements.
Tejas Upemi, thank you. Okay, I'll proceed with the presentation. Right, as I earlier said, it's just a quick, it shouldn't be long, it's a quick run through of the mixer for everyone to understand some bits about it. So this is what I'll be covering. A quick introduction, getting to know your cables, an overview of the mixer console itself, what's behind the console, what's on top of the console, how the console is divided. You have the left fader bank and the right fader bank. Concepts like preamp or gain, gate and compression, EQ. EQ stands for equalizer. Scenes, DCAs, buses, matrices, intro into routing on the board. So I'll be referring to the board quite often as X32. M32 is also another variant. It's made by the same company called Midas, and an additional video resource. So this is the outline of what we'll be doing today. Please feel free to stop me if you have any questions as we proceed. So at the end of this training, I would expect everyone to be able to know what a digital mixer is, to be able to identify some of your audio cables that you use every Sunday or every other day if you're outside the church and you're involved in sound. Understand the layout of the mixer, know what AES50 is. We'll get to that in the training, and understand what DCAs and buses are. It's quite a very simple presentation and for everyone to understand. So the next slide. So basically, what is an audio mixer? We use this every Sunday in the church or any special program we have. So basically, it's a device that you hook up your varying cables to receive signals from your microphones, to amplify the sounds. So you compile all the signals that come from the microphone, the drum set, an acoustic guitar, the drums, the keyboard, all into one device. So you can make adjustments and you have your audio sounding best. I just put a simple definition there. It's a device common to sound setups for connecting equipment, electronic equipment, and microphones to gather your audio signals and enable you to modify. So the keyword there is modify and adjust so that it can sound best. It uses a mixing technology when you need precision control over one or more sound sources, like I mentioned earlier. It could be a live performance, it could be a worship session, it could be a concert. FOH here stands for front of house, and it could also be a recording studio. Now, for this mixer, it can be of two types. Commonly, we have the analog type, and also we have the digital type. And this is basically what you will see. There are different brands. The one on my left, it's a Behringer X32 full digital mixer. Now, I'm using the word full because there are other variants of this same X32. X32 here stands for 32 channels. There's the X32 compact, is smaller than this one on my left. That's here. There's the X32 producer as well. It's not as big as this one, but the one on my left is a full console with 32 different input channels and 6 auxiliary inputs. So, I will get to that. And the one on my right is an analog mixer. This is made by Yamaha and is a 20 channel type. Also has the same faders. If you can see my cursor, 20 of them just for taking your inputs, and it's linear in the sense that it runs from top to bottom, how it's being processed. So a signal comes in and you make all your knob adjustments up until you adjust your volume. Now, a digital mixer. Why a digital mixer and what is a digital mixer? Basically, as I said in the earlier slide, a mixer helps us process audio and collate it so that we can have our best sound. What makes a digital mixer what it is that it processes and records audio digitally. Now, digitally in the sense that it takes that signal, it converts it into bits, binary bits, ones and zeros. We hear this quite often. So it's easy to manipulate and record while giving you a lot of flexibility. Now, you might ask, why a digital mixer, not an analog mixer? One of the key advantages of a digital mixer is enhanced customization. And what does this mean? You are able to walk around your audio signal that comes in. You're able to work on the tone. You're able to add some special effects to it. You are able to single out frequencies that you might not like while editing. Basically, it gives you that enablement to make customization as much as you want. When you're making your mixes, you're able to save. Another advantage is you have more channels and it's smaller in size. Like I said, okay, I'll just go back quickly to this. Yeah. So it's smaller in size. Now this is 32. And if we count, you would see that there are just 16 and you'll be wondering, how come it's 32? Well, because it's a digital mixer, it works with layers. And that's basically why we can have more channels and you can integrate other devices to it. is quite flexible in the sense that your mixer could be at one spot and you could have these other integrated devices far away from the mixer, giving you flexibility in terms of using your electronic equipment, because the guitar will be in front of house, that's on the stage, and you don't need to run a cable all the way down to where your mixer is. Your mixer could be as far as maybe 100 meters away, or maybe let me use feet, for example, 50 feet, 100 feet away. You might not have cables that long, but with a CAT cable or internet cable, you are able to have that flexibility to pick your inputs and outputs however you want. It's precise and it's consistent audio quality. Precise in the sense that you are able to make manipulations because this audio is taken in digitally in ones and zeros. You are able to have very precise control on how you want the audio to sound. Expanded control, basically devices that you can integrate into it, streamlined settings and time-saving solutions. A number of times when you go for a program, you might have to make your settings from start to finish before, especially if it's a live show, before the event commences. With a digital mixer, once you've made your setting once, you can easily save it. And all you need to do is with the push of a button, you can recall that setting that you've done. You might have 3 or 4 bands that want to play in a particular session. And rather than tuning, which will take your time, once it's done, has been done previously, with the push of a button, you can recall it. That saves you a lot of time. And the maintenance is minimal. Like the analog one, I spoke about the rotary knobs. With turning and turning and turning of those multiple knobs, they could easily get damaged. But with the digital mixer, it's just a push of a button. I mean, these are just a few reasons why a digital mixer would be more advantageous or would be a good choice to scale up to from an analog mixer. That does not mean an analog mixer is not good. The next slide. Is anyone having any questions so far? Okay, I would guess not. So this is basically, do you
Sorry.
know your sound cable?
Sorry, I have a question. The question you did mention about that we could save it. How do we
Yes.
save it? Do we save it on the USB stick, or how do we just save it to recall? Can it be saved on the system, on the mixer itself?
Okay. Thank you for that question, Pastor G. I will get to a slide where I will speak more in depth about how you save your mixes. However, it's saved on board on the mixer. When you make your settings, you put in your gain, adjust your fader volumes, put your special effects, and when all that is done, a simple push of a button can help you save all those settings, and whenever you need, save it and you name it, just like you save files on the computer. The mixer is able to do that as a digital mixer. Once that is done, with the push of a button, it recalls all the settings that you had done previously. It could be a week ago, it could be 2 weeks ago. As long as it's saved and you're able to access on board the mixer what you had named it as, you push the button and those faders automatically adjust to what you had done previously, because digital mixers use what you call motorized faders. That's how the saving works, but I'll speak more on that in the further slides ahead. I hope that answers the question, sir.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks.
Is there any other question from anybody so far? Please feel free. I want to make it as interactive as possible. Okay. So we've got a couple of pictures right ahead of us, and I'm pretty sure we see these cables every Sunday, and we do connect them. So is there anyone that could identify any of the cables? Please just try if you do know anyone, because, oh, okay. Lizzie, go ahead.
I use the top left ones to connect like the mic boxes to the mixer.
Okay, good. Yeah. Okay, Esther, go on.
The cable on the bottom right, the far right, you use that you plug it into the big mixer and then you connect it to the smaller mixer that's connected to the laptops.
Yes, thank you very
And so,
much.
and is the cable on the far right on the bottom, is that the one that's for the mixer to like put power into it?
Yes. This one where my arrow cursor is?
Yeah.
Yes, that's for power. That's for power. So Lizzie identified the one on my top left. Esther identified the one on my bottom left. Also the one on the bottom right. So we've got these two. Does anyone know? Can anyone help? TJ Supemi, Raphael. Okay, I think
I
thank
think
you for the answer.
the one in the middle, that's the bottom line.
Okay.
Looks like the sound what you use to connect the sound to from the mixer to probably the laptop. I've seen such a thing before. I might be wrong.
Yes, it can serve that purpose actually. It can serve that purpose actually. Thank you, sir. Okay, so this is the one that is not been mentioned by anyone. All right.
Wait, sorry, is it to do with Wi-Fi or something?
Yes, it can be used with Wi-Fi. However, in this case, it's the cable that runs from the digital mixer down to something called the stage box. So, okay, everyone is given what they are used for. Do we actually know their names though? If anyone knows the name of anyone that you've identified. Esther said this is the power cable. Yes, that's correct. Lizzie, is your hand still raised?
Oh no, sorry. I thought the one on the bottom left was a kettle plug. Yeah.
Bottom left. Yes, you are correct. It's a kettle plug. That's what it's called, kettle lead or power plug. So that's actually correct. That's correct. Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Just to give a try. Okay, not to spend too much time on it, I'll go to the next slide. Now, these are the actual names of these cables. And the reason why I put the pictures first is we see them every Sunday. However, but if you needed to tell someone that you needed help, can you get me that cable? How do you name that cable? Because it makes your job easier when you know what cable you are looking for. So these are the names of these cables. Just like Lizzie rightly said, the one on the top left is for connecting the microphones to, if it's a wired microphone, to the mixer. If it's a wireless microphone from the receiver box to the mixer, it's called an XLR cable. And it's a very, very common cable in the sound industry. The one on the bottom left, it's a kettle lead. It's basically a power cable. It uniquely has these three slots because it goes into the power slot. So this is more identified as a female plug. And so basically in sound, any cable that protrudes out, they refer to it as male pin, and they refer to the ones that have holes as female pin. That's just generic name they call them. The one I will go at the bottom, the red and white one is called a red and white RCA to stereo. So that's why you can use it to transfer sound from the mixer or from even a radio deck to a laptop, because that's the where you also plug your headphones. You can see it looks like it. And this one is called, so the first one is called a TRS, and the one next to it is called a TS. Now, the name comes from what you see just right here. TRS stands for tip, ring, and sleeve. and it's basically for balanced audio. I don't want to make this so technical, but just remember that it's for balanced audio. And a TS is just a tip and a sleeve. Is an unbalanced audio, which means you require something in addition to cancel out your noise. So when I say noise here, I'm referring to electronic noise. You basically, sometimes you don't hear them. Sometimes they're a bit audible. It could be a crackling sound, but sometimes you do not hear them. Or you might be wondering what's making noise in the background, but everything seems quiet. That's the noise I'm referring to. So that's one issue with unbalanced audio. So in all of this, the XLR cable sends you balanced audio. The RCA, red and white, also sends balanced audio. Now, stereo here is because you have a left and you have a right. I think the left is usually the white and the right is usually the red one. And now this cable in particular here, it's a special cable that combines two things. Yes, it was mentioned to be an Ethernet cable, but it's a Cat5 type. Cat5 just basically refers to something called the twist rate and how much packet it can transfer. I want to make it really simple. And the reason why it's shielded is because if you look beside where my cursor is, there is a metal plate on both sides of that jack. Now, why is it shielded? Because it prevents interference if you run the cable over a very, very long distance. The unshielded ones, all you will just see is plastic. Now, the AES50 protocol is basically how that digital mixer is able to communicate with a stage box that is far away from the mixer, which this cable is what connects both. And it enables that audio to be transferred in a digital form. Remember, like I said, from wherever the input signal is coming from, it could be a guitar, it could be a drum, it could be a vocal, that's voice, down to the mixer. So this AES50 protocol is basically what allows that communication between the digital mixer and the stage box. You also have other devices. You have the Dante card, you have the P16 for in-ear monitoring and the likes, but let's keep it simple. This cable is what enables you connect the digital mixer from where it is to a stage box so that you have flexibility of input. Is there any question around these cables just before I go forward? Okay, no questions. Let me go
Wait,
ahead.
sorry. I was gonna ask, with the new mixer, with all these cables, like, will we still be using every single one of these cables?
Thank you for your question, Lizzie. Yes, we would. So with the new mixer, the power cable will be used to power up the mixer. The XLR cable, like you already do every Sunday, would run between your receiver box to the mixer, so that will still be used. The TRS or the TS cable, depending on how we choose to transfer sound from the mixer into our streaming software, would be used. So it's up to the sound engineer to decide if he wants to use an XLR to transmit the sound to the computer, or this TRS or TS cable. Sometimes you hear auxiliary. That's just a common name for it, AUX cable, aux cable. That also can be used. And one cable that is not here that can also be used is called a USB cable. Does that answer the question, Lizzie?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Right. So the next slide. These are some other audio cables. I mean, we've identified some, the XLR, the TS, the TRS, the RCA. This is the USB cable. I think Esther would be familiar with this cable with the Mac laptop. This Firewire is also an audio cable. We don't use it for now. The ADAT is also an audio cable, sometimes with speakers, depending on the kind of speaker, if it's a passive or active speaker. BNC is also another cable that's sometimes used for audio behind the television. Sometimes it's also used with CCTV cameras. That's the bit that transfers sound. But these are all examples of audio cables. And this is just here for us to just know the cables that we use from day to day. The MIDI also is another cable. We'll find this one as well on the digital mixer by the time I display the picture again. So just go to the next slide. So yes, now being specific on the mixer, which is the new gear that we bought. Like I said, it's a digital mixer. This one is called Behringer, but it's made by a parent company called Midas. So remember at the beginning of the presentation, I said X32 or M32. So the M32 basically there is a Midas version, and it gives you much more flexibility than the X32, but the framework of both of them are the same. If you know how to operate the X32, you can handle the M32 as well. But it gives you, I would say, a further enhanced audio quality with the M32. It uses AES 50 protocol, like I explained, that cable earlier. That's this one, this cable here. That's what runs between the digital mixer, this is the X32, to a stage box. It's upgradable. Now, if you look to where my cursor is, right here is a USB port. Now, you have this LCD screen. We will see those labelings further below. You can plug in a USB port here, a USB drive, sorry. And what that does is, from time to time, Behringer release updates to how the software of the mixer works. And that is how you're able to update the mixer to the latest firmware version. And you can also play music through the same USB as well. And you can also back up those settings, like I said earlier. Once they are mixed and you save them, you can back them up through the same USB port. The LCD screen basically helps you visualize some of these things that we are seeing all over here on a screen to make it let me use the word, more visual sense and make it more appealing, because just seeing all these faders can be a little bit intimidating. And I said 40 local inputs it has. So we will see what I mean by 40 local inputs. So these are the technical specifications of this mixer. I don't want to spend so much time here, but basically we've spoken about some of them. X32 because it has 32 channels and 6 auxiliary inputs using the TRS line, sometimes referred to as the AUX, as I said. Because it's a full console, it has 16 XLR outputs and also 6 additional auxiliary outputs, all of TRS. You can see TRS because a balanced sound, a balanced audio is what you need rather than an unbalanced audio, hence the TRS. 25 mix boxes, 24 bits, it's kind of the bit rate, 44.1, 48 kilohertz. It's how you choose to record the audio in terms of the frequency. You are able to connect more than one stage box to this mixer. That's why you see 2 by AES 50 for input and output. You have the 32 Firewire. Remember that cable? It was one of the cables for recording. You can do something called a multi-track recording. Multi-track simply means you can record. Okay, let's take the drum for example. We hear the sound because the drummer hits everything at the same time. But you can actually isolate just the kick drum. You can isolate the cymbals. You can isolate just the snare. That's what the multi-recording does, and that's what this allows us to do. Alternate is basically for stage monitors, where sometimes you see some musicians that have a little device that might be on their waist and something in their ears. It allows them to hear themselves, and That's what that P16 monitoring system does. But basically, we know the bits we need to know. Let's not bother on all of this jargon. Just know for X32, it has 32 channels, and in terms of inputs, you have 6 additional ones, 16 outputs on the console. We will see a visual representation of that now. So this is, okay, let me just do it this way. This is what the back of the mixer looks like. Let's just spend maybe about 10 seconds having a glance at every labeling here. Now, I'll start from my left, which is the yellow box. The yellow box is basically the power switch. That's where that kettle lid goes into to power up your mixer. The red box, the blue one rather, which is number 2, is your XLR output. Basically, whatever goes into the mixer and you want to pass the output physically to a speaker, it comes from this point. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, up to 16. Now, one thing to note here, for a full console, which is the X32 here, by default, your front of house speakers are always in output 15 and output 16. If it were a Behringer X32 compact, that one usually has 8 outputs. And by default, the XLR cable that runs from your mixer to your speaker is usually output 7 and 8. Now, I said by default because you can actually choose to change it if you wanted to. But by default, for a full console, your front of house speaker, which is left and right, that's why there are 2, which is a stereo sound, runs out from output 15 and output 16. They are XLR outputs. I've only labeled the things I want us to focus on here. 3 is the AES 50 ports. Now, you may be tempted to want to plug that cable because it says Ethernet here. If you do this, there will be no communication between the stage box and your mixer. But the AES protocol, like I said, is what allows that communication. And why do you have 2? Because you can actually combine 2 stage boxes. And there's an A and a B. So the A port of the mixer, the rear of the mixer, goes to the same port on the stage box. And if you want to use the B, you can also do that. But what this means is you can have either 2 stage boxes of 16 channels or 2 stage boxes of 32 channels. So that's where that cable, the Ethernet cable, which I showed earlier, is connected. We have the output for, okay, that's 4. This is the auxiliary input and output as well for the mixer. You can see it has the port of the TRS. And then if you see 6 of them, if you see the red and the white one, that's for the RCA. So we have so many options of cables to use. It's all to your preference. But let's just remember that a cable that gives you balanced sound is what you want to stick to. And then the 5, which is here, the red box, has 32 input XLR ports, basically for input cables. Now, I just want to mention something here. You can see that these red lights are on all the input channels. There's a reason why it's on, and they could also be off. I will speak about that much later in the presentation, but let's just keep that in mind. Is there any question about the rear of the mixer before I go to the next slide? Okay, I assume there are no questions for now. Maybe you are still writing the questions down. Right, next slide. Now, this is the top view of the mixer. You have seen this picture before. Now, I've been saying stage box, stage box, stage box. This is what a stage box looks like. You can see the output channels here. This is a 16 channel stage box, and that's why it's called an S16. So this 16 inputs and 8 outputs here. So this is what allows you to expand your inputs so that you don't have to run wires directly from your instrument to the back of the mixer. You can connect them to this stage box, and that singular AES 50 cable will connect the mixer and the stage box. And you can have 2 of these. It's all depending on your use case. Okay, so the top view of the mixer. Let's also have a look at this. The red box here, number 1, is called the left fader bank. Now, for ease, let's divide the board into 2. From this line here, halfway line here. And that's why we have a left fader bank and we have a right fader bank. Now, on the left fader bank, you have 16 motorized faders representing 1 channel each. But you might ask me the question, what is a 32 channel mixer? Does anyone have any maybe thoughts to how you might be able to access the rest of the channels, or how is it 32? I mean, we have 32 XLR inputs at the rear of the mixer, but we just have 16 here. Anyone just give a try? I mean, we are all learning here.
You said there, I think what you mentioned said there are in layers. This digital mixer allows you to do in layers. I don't know if that's right. And you mentioned something like that.
Yes, I did mention layers. Thank you, sir, for that, for remembering that. And that is with these layers that we are able to access the other bits of the input channels. So I've written here on the left fader bank, we have input channel 1 to 16, which we can clearly see here. But I've also written input 17 to 32. Now, how do you access this? It's very simple. If you can see where on this red box here, this light is on. On the actual mixer itself, that print is just really tiny. It's labeled input 1 to 16. So when this light is on, it means every fader here represents channel 1 to 16. All you need to do is push on this button here, the next button, and that will light up. So if we had the actual mixer here, I pushed on this button, every fader here will go to the bottom, just to show you the difference. Remember, they are motorized faders and it's digital. So once this light is on, the next one, it means you are operating between channel 17 to 32. The third one, if you press that one, it means you've gone to the third layer. And the third layer is the auxiliary channels, which is the additional inputs of RCA and TRS, and also some special effects channels. And then there's a fourth one, which is a bus master. Now, I'm using a number of terminologies here. Oh, Esther, okay. Have a question for me?
I was just wondering whether you can use multiple layers at the same time. Like if you're using layer 1, can you also use layer 3? Or like, would it work like that?
Thank you for your question, Esther. Yes, in fact, that is the flexibility that this mixer gives you. So for example, you could choose, if you had maybe your drums on channel 1 to maybe 1 to 7, all the drum mics, you can choose to leave the rest of the channels and go to channel 17 to 32 where you have your microphones and any other inputs you want to put in there. So yes, you can use them at the same time. And once you push the buttons, it responds instantly. Does that answer that question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So moving to number 2, we have the right fader bank, which is what I have in blue here. Now, I separated number 2 and 3 for a reason. And this reason is simple. Number 3 is basically your main fader, which controls your main output speaker, which I said comes out of outputs 15 and 16 for a big console like this. But it's still part of the right fader bank. So the same way the left fader bank operates in layers is the same way the right fader bank operates in layers. So for this button that is lit up here, okay, in fact, let me ask this question on the left fader bank. Can anybody tell me how many channels and on what layer is currently activated in this box 1?
Is it layer 1, channel 1 to 6? No, is it 16 or 17? 16?
Yes. So right now, because this is activated, you are between channel 1 and 16. So could you, if you were to just see what channels you think are actually on right now between 1 and 16?
I think 4.
Okay, thank you. 4.
7.
Yep, 7.
12.
Yes.
14.
This should be, if this 16, 15, 14, so that would be 13. But thank you for the attempt. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And it means we are following. So basically, because this is a picture, I mean, for the video, we could see the difference, which we'll probably see on Sunday. Yes, it's a select button, which I'll speak about much later, that shows channel 4 right now is selected to do something. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and the last one. So yes, thank you for that. But let's just remember, if this was the light that was on, that's the next one, it means we are actually on channel 17 to 32. Let's just take note of that. That's how the layering of this mixer works. If this is on, you are between channel 1 to 16. If the one below it is on, it means you are between channel 17 to 32. And it's the same thing as well for the right fader bank. But what we have on the right fader bank is the same 4 layers. The first one is something called DCAs. Now, DCA stands for digitally controlled amplifier. That's just simply what DCA stands for. You don't have to even know the full meaning if you choose not to. But what a DCA does is that it serves as a way to group a number of your channels to use one fader to control that volume. Now, what do I mean? For example, if we had 7 channels on the drums. Now, you don't want to reduce the snare, push the tom up, for a streaming session. But what you can do is actually group those 7 channels into one DCA, and you can name it drum DCA. So if you want to reduce the volume of the drums overall, it's just that singular one you've named a drum DCA that you just need to adjust. This is where the flexibility and versatility of the digital mixer comes in. But let's just always keep notes that be mindful of what light is on so you don't turn down or turn up what you do not want to turn up. That's just it. And you can group whatever you want to group. You can group the keyboard channels into one DCA. You can group all the microphone, maybe all the, for the singers or choristers, you can group all their mics into one DCA. You can do that for the acoustic guitars, but I mean, it's all up to you how you choose to do your mix. Then just below it, we have something called bus. Now, in simple terms, what the bus does is it allows you to sum your mix into one place or group, and then you can send that to whatever speaker you want to send it to. So let me give a scenario. If you had on one of your channels here, maybe just sound like music playing while waiting for the event to start, you can choose to group that song that is incoming on your left fader bank. Most times it's always called tracks, into one bus and send that bus to a speaker that is probably outside the event center, maybe because it's the speaker outside. That's what that can do for you. And that's how every bus will work. So we have 16 of them, which is one, you count 1 to 8, and when you go to the next layer, 9 to 16. Now, metrics is a step ahead of, let me say, a step above a bus. Now, with a metrics, which usually is the bottom here, you can apply your processing. Now, what is this processing I'm talking about? When you've added things like your equalizer effects, your gate setting, your compression. Now, I've not spoken about this top, my top left here, above the left fader bank. These are channel strips, basically. And let me mention one thing here, but I'll say it again when we get to the next slides ahead, is for each channel here on the left fader bank, whenever you select any one of them, everything here is available for you to adjust. I'll say that again. For each channel you select here, you can adjust all these entities for that signal that is coming into that channel. I'll speak about it much later again in a few slides that are just ahead. But let's just keep that in mind. And then the LCD screen, like I said, it allows you visualize any of these things here. So one good thing about this digital mixer here is there is something called a view button. So apart from these tiny meters we can see here on both the left fader bank, the channels, and also the right fader bank, where you have these green things, tiny things here, you can visualize what you are doing on this LCD screen here by hitting the view button. Also on this LCD screen, you have 6 rotary knobs that allow you do whatever you want to adjust by turning the knobs, either to select something, to adjust the value of something, to move from one selection to another selection. That's what these rotary knobs will help you do. The same thing with the layer button. And then all these buttons here: home, meters, routing, setup, library, effects, mute group, utility. They are all, we won't go into that for today, but they are all functions that allow you dive deeper into the settings of the mixer. Let's just stop there for this training session. These are other bits that will be useful much later, but I'm sticking to what we are going to be doing, or what will, at least is an introduction. So let's just understand the board. So like I said, you have the left fader bank, which is in red here. You have the right fader bank, which is in blue. We have the yellow fader bank, the yellow ones, which is the main fader, and we have the LCD screen in green. So we have about 30 minutes just before we join the prayer for our fast that is ongoing. So I'll just try to wrap up the presentation. But please, if you do have any questions, I'm happy to answer. Okay, so this is the left feeder bank and the right feeder bank. As I said, what I've done here is try to make this bigger for us to see what is on the left side and the right side. So on the left side, remember I said channel 1 to 16 is how you get to the layers. So 1 to 16, when you push this, it turns green. 17 to 32, when you push this, it turns green. Excuse me. For the auxiliary and effects returns. And when you push this, you move to the 4th layer. So basically, on the left feeder bank, you have 4 layers. Let's put it that way. Channel 1 to 16, 17 to 32, the aux additional inputs and the special effects, and then the bus master. Now, you can see I've highlighted these buttons. Now, for each channel, you have a select button, you have a mute button, you have a solo button, and you have the fader you use to adjust the volume. Now, let me start with the select button. The select button allows you to select that channel on whatever layer you are. That's just what the select button does. The mute button, just like it sounds, mute, makes that particular channel quiet. So if it were a live stream or you were editing, once you just want to have that quiet, you have that particular channel quiet. It could be maybe the alto singer, it could be the soprano singer, it could be the guitarist, depending on what you would choose to do. This fader here, there's one thing I want us to note here. This is motorized. Motorized because when you save your mixes and you record them, it goes automatically to where you had set it previously, so long you saved it. Now, if you see this scale here, I just want to say something here so that we can just understand what this scale is. This scale is a logarithmic scale. Now, what do I mean by that? In simple terms, you can see from this is -5, this is actually 0. We have positive 0 to 10 here. But at this bottom here, we have infinity to 50. Now, you might think if you move this from 0 to 5, you've moved by 5. For this upper part, yes, you've moved by 5 decibels. But if you do the same thing for the bottom here, let's say your fader was here at 50. If you move it the same amount you've moved it if you were at the top here, you've actually moved over 20 decibels. And that's what that logarithmic just basically means. And that's why when you are setting your gain, it's very important to have a good gain. I've been saying gain, gain, gain. A good gain basically is pushing your audio signal inputs from the mic, from line level to mic level, from mic level to line level, so that the board can process it. And this solo is also on the, it's all over as you can see here. Allows you to listen to just one channel individually, so long you have your headphones plugged in. So if you were just the alto singer you wanted to listen to in the whole sound of that place, all you'll be hearing is the voice of the alto singer. That's what that solo. So it allows you single out one channel and listen to it. So that's basically what this does. Yeah, okay. So these were the channel strips I spoke about. And on the channel strips, we have a number of things. The first one I want to start with is the gain. Now, this gain section, the one in yellow here, has a rotary knob, it has a frequency, it has this button, that button, that button, and the view button. I'll start from the gain. Elizabeth will probably be familiar with this because when you're hooking up your wireless mics, is what you want to push and adjust so that you can have a bass level sound, good enough that it's not too high, it's not too low, and is also audible. That's what you do with this button. Basically, let's think of gain as how sensitive you want the microphone to be. So you do not want it, when you adjust this, you can choose to do it two ways. Either as you are rotating this knob, you watch the meter here and it keeps going up based on whatever signal is coming. Maybe the singer is just humming or making some dynamic sounds like la 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 la, or things like that. You do not want it too high to clipping because clipping is distortion, and you do not want it too low that is quiet. So a mid-range is always somewhere here. And I will say this, keep these figures in mind as a reference point. -12 to -18 is a good range for you. And you adjust that with the gain button. Now, this button here is the one I've called the 48-volt phantom power. Now, we have a number of different types of microphones, but for microphones that are condensed microphones, they are called condensed microphones because they have circuitries inside them that needs to be powered before you can get sound from them into the speaker. That's what the phantom power does, because those microphones have inbuilt circuitry in them that needs to be powered. Just one thing to note is if you have a condensed mic, most of the mics we have in church now are not condensed mics. But if you have a condensed mic, a condenser mic, before you activate this, and you have people who have in-ear monitors in their ears, please tell them to take it off before you turn it off, because it gives like a boost. So it might produce maybe a loud sound in their ears, which can be quite uncomfortable. This next button here is a polarity button, and it's very useful whenever you mic the snare drums, because a mic can be at the top and at the bottom. Basically, what that does is adjust it so that they can be in phase, or it can sound as one sound. That's just what that does. It switches the polarity. That's what it does. But we might not necessarily need it if you're only micing the top of the snare drum. Low cut here, this next button, basically helps you to cut out all those noises I spoke about, which you might be hearing which doesn't allow your audio to be clear. So once you activate this low cut, you are able to adjust the frequency of what you want to cut out that will not sound. That also helps for clarity of sound as well. And this view button is, when you push it, it allows you view everything you are doing here on that LCD. The LCD is here, so I just cut it out because I had to zoom on this bit. So on the gain side, which is this yellow point, you have the configure preamp, you have the gain, the frequency, the phantom power button, which is this 48 volts, polarity button, low cut, and your view to view whatever you're doing on the LCD screen. I don't want to spend too much time on this. You have the equalizer section. On that section, you have the rotary knob as well. You have the mode, which depends on what you want to deal with in terms of the frequency and special effects. You have this frequency knob to move from one frequency to another, from as low as maybe 1 hertz to as high as 6,000 hertz, kilohertz or hertz. Yeah. And then the gain as well can be adjusted. And there's something called Q. It helps you adjust the bandwidth. So where this is useful is when you are adding effects to maybe a voice or a vocal sound. Now, for every voice, as I'm speaking, my voice has roughly about 4 different categories. There's the low mid, which is higher than the low. There's the high mid, and there's the high. So most soprano singers will probably be in that range of high, rather than maybe bass singers or tenor singers that might be in low or mid-low. But it all depends on what you want to process. So it gives you that flexibility to deal with 4 different frequencies in a vocal tone. That's what all these is that's what the equalizer does. And it comes in different modes based on whatever you want to do. And it has a view button that allows you visually see what you're doing when you're editing. One thing I'll mention here is we have 4 of them, but when you are dealing with special effects, this 4 becomes 6, depending on what you want to do, which is what you are seeing here: low, mid-low, low to high, mid-high, high, and high to 6. But that's just much more advanced. So let's leave that for now. And then we have this section here. Now you have gates, and you have the dynamics. Now I'll just speak about 2 things here, so we don't go too deep. What is gate? Gate basically is something that helps you automatically mute a mic. So if you set the gate and a speaker is speaking and suddenly pauses for a bit, if you have your gate set to whatever threshold or frequency you want it, while the speaker is quiet, it automatically turns off the mic, so it doesn't pick unwanted sound. Now, the dynamics here is basically compression. Now, what compression does is, if you have, maybe when you're speaking very loudly or shouting into the mic, what that compression does is it augments to make the tone or the voice sound more compact. But all of this here is always about personal preference and also trying to make the voice as clear as possible or the audio as clear as possible while not degrading the tonality of that audio. So you don't want it sounding unnatural. Basically, that's what I'm saying, depending on how we process it. So let's just move because of our time. And remember, it has a view button as well. This bus sense is just basically similar to those same buses that I showed on the right fader bank. And then we have the USB. I spoke about this. Allows you upgrade the mixer firmware, allows you save as a backup what you've saved on the mixer in terms of your mix settings which you have saved and named. And it also allows you to play tracks from a USB drive. And it also has a view button. Let's just remember that everything here has a view button to allow you see what you are doing on that LCD screen. And then Pastor G asked a question about how you save. Now, for everything that you have mixed on the mixer, however you moved your faders, you go to something called scenes. That's where you save, and that's how you save. So once it's done and you've adjusted, set your preamps to the particular gain you want, put gate, put compression, put your EQ, or however you want the audio or voice to sound, you can now save all that in scenes. And whenever you want to recall, it's still these scenes you come to. So you click it, it displays here, and you just go to your selection, and then you select it. Go, and it picks it up. That's all. And then, like I said, scenes allow you to save customized parameter of mixes, and then your LCD screen to view whatever you want to do. Same LCD screen is applicable to all these button selections here. So the terminologies to note, which I mentioned, I spoke about DCAs, I spoke about mixed buses. Mixed buses are also called sends, and also the matrix. Basically, it's just a way of, depending on what you want to do, like I said, DCA, one singular volume for multiple channels, so that you can use one single fader to adjust. The mix bus or the sends to send your summary of those channels to a particular output, and the metrics allows you to add effects on what you've done in those mixes before it gets to the output. So it all depends on the level of what you want to do. Okay. Now I just put this here because it's something we might need to do much later. Now, this is basically routing. Routing is something very important in a digital mixer. And what that does basically is it helps you connect your physical input or output to a virtual one which is on the mixer. I'll say that again. The routing helps you to connect your physical input or output so that it's not floating in the brain of the mixer as vacant to the virtual one. That's what that does. Now, I put some keys here. At the top here, 1 to 8 basically means channel 1 to 8, 9 to 16, channel 9 to 16, 17 to 24. I'm referring to the fader banks now, the faders rather, and 25 to 32. Now, with the software of the mixer, this digital mixer, which is common to Midas and Behringer. This is Midas here because this screenshot I have here is from an M32, but they are the same framework, like I said. It's grouped in banks of 8. Now, anything local just simply means you are putting a physical connection behind the console. So for Lizzie, in terms of those wireless microphones, they will have to be in local for your inputs whenever the routing is being done. But that's when we dive deep into that. The AES 50, which is somewhere here, if you select that, it means you're talking about your input from your stage box. Either it be AES A, if you're using 1, most likely it's AES A, and you use the A port. But if you're using 2, it will now be AES A and AES B, depending on what you choose to do. And now that is where this versatility I'm talking about comes into play, of how you want to do it. And then there is a card, which is something inbuilt on the mixer. It also has 32 channels, which you can do virtual sound checks on if you have done some recording. And then it's not showing here. There's also another option called user. Now, the latest firmware of this mixer added something that you could customize your input or output how you want, rather than going in blocks of 8. But I'll just say that to allow us just know that and have it in mind. Now, routing tab simply allows you to link physical inputs or outputs to virtual. I/O here means input output inside the board to produce sound. It's basically called mapping or channel processing. And this allows flexibility. That's all I'll say about routing for now, because routing is a topic on its own as well. And yeah, we've heard quite a number of things, but again, this is just an introduction. And with all this, I mean, what would be your take? The analog mixer or the digital mixer? Anybody? Your preference, just from the beats you've heard? Okay, go on, Lizzie.
I feel like for now it would be analog just because the digital is a bit unfamiliar to me. But I feel like if I learn just a bit more and get more comfortable with the digital one, because I feel like it's easier once it's set up, and you said that we can save it. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Lizzie. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, the analog is really straightforward. Just more or less like plug and play. Anybody else? Anybody else just has anything to say? Okay. So, but basically, I only put this picture here because once you get used to this digital mixer, you probably do not want to go back to the analog, to be honest, because again, it's all about preference. But like Lizzie said, for now, just a little bit more learning and hands-on, we can have the choice to use a digital mixer. So it's all about preference anyway. But for improved sound quality, yes, a digital mixer gives you so much flexibility to do a number of things. Now, these are just links for any one of us to go watch. I mean, it's on YouTube. We all have access to YouTube to get some more information on this mixer in particular. I've just limited it to just 4 of them. They are roughly about some maybe 20 minutes video, some 17 minutes, but you can watch and I can provide the slides if you do want them. And that will be all for now in terms of the intro to the mixer. Thank you so much for your attention. And I hope we've picked up one or two things about the mixer, and at least if we do see it on Sunday, it won't feel a little bit strange anymore. But we'll stop this training for now. We have that 10 minutes to 7 o'clock, so we can prepare to join the prayer for the ongoing fast. Thank you very much.
Just to mention, the recording with the link will also be sent out if you want to watch it. So we'll be sending it. We're going to circulate it on the multimedia WhatsApp.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.